If you've been following my journey, you know I'm all about helping men design a life that truly excites them. Well, I'm pumped to announce that the Life Design Blueprint is launching on Saturday, the 7th of September, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Now, this isn't just another course. It's a 4-week transformational program designed to help you gain clarity on what it is that you really want in life, setting actionable goals, and developing the systems and mindsets that you need to achieve them. Whether you're looking to start your own business, improve your personal life, or just get more out of your day-to-day, this program is exactly what you need. And it is going to be run live over 4 weeks with yours truly. So I'm pumped to meet a number of you guys. Now, here's the deal. The course is limited to just 50 people. And I want to make sure that everyone gets the attention and support that they deserve. And as a special bonus, the first 10 people who join during this intake will get a free one-to-one coaching session with me during the course. And that is valued at $500. We'll dive deep into your goals, challenges, and create a plan that's tailored specifically for you. So if you're serious about taking control of your life and making real progress, don't wait. Right, spots will fill up fast. So head over to thementhatcanproject.com/Life Design Blueprint and you can book your spot there. Or better yet, just go to the show notes and you will be able to check it out there. I look forward to having you join me for this 4-week transformational program. Just a reminder that the next intake kicks off on the 7th of September, so just over 3 weeks away. To book your spot, head to thementhatcanproject.com or use the link in the show notes. I look forward to having you there. Now, let's get this episode started. I was listening to you on my run this morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're the most legendary dude that just is so determined, but also doesn't give a fuck about how you come. Like, you just love, you're so authentic.
Yeah.
The word that I'm looking for. And I love that. Like, I listened to 2 poddies of it and I was like, this guy's legit. I think Justin's been trying to get us to meet for a number of weeks, but we've always just crossed paths. So it's good to finally have you on here.
Yeah, I think I posted something on social media, and you I guess you responded to it. I was like, let's do a pod one day, because he told me he'd just done yours, and I'd listened to it, and I have a couple of friends that have podcasts here in town, and I'm always like down to sit down and do podcasts. I love it, so I'm glad I'm here.
Man, it's funny because it would have been about 6 weeks ago was the first time I ever heard of not 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
We were at an event, like a dinner anyway, and your song, one of your songs came on, and these guys are like, oh, this is the guy who wrote Dick Down, and it wasn't Dick Down in Dallas, it was a different song of yours. And I was like, I don't know any of them. And then they're like, oh, you got to check this out. And then, so that's when I first came across you, and then I started seeing you on some of Justin's stories, and that's when obviously I gave you a follow and have listened to all your music, and it's fucking awesome,
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
I'm excited to obviously be able to pick your brain, and you've lived, from what I've heard and what I've listened to, it's like you've lived many lives.
10 different lives. Yeah.
And you're 36 years young, dude, and you're just on this awesome adventure. But I guess majority of our audience is Aussies, Australians.
Yeah.
Mate, give us a bit of a rundown on who Trey Lewis is.
I love that you say mate. I know that's like an everyday language thing, but me and my manager say that a lot to each other. Yeah. So like when I texted you, I was like, sounds great, mate. Like, you didn't, is he being like,
no, I just thought
trying
you
to
were
speak
one
my
of us,
language,
man.
or what?
I just thought, I don't even notice it. It's funny though. There's one thing that we say that whenever I text people that they think that they're in trouble, whenever I say, someone says something, I go, no worries. They're like, what? Is it a problem? I'm like, no, it's not a problem. It's like, no worries.
No worries.
It's fine.
It's cool, dude. Yeah, man, but I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, which is about 3 hours from Nashville. So short drive if I ever want to go home. And I mean, I guess we'll just tell the whole story. Does that sound good?
Man, I'm keen as.
Yeah, so I grew up there. As far back as I can remember, I had a stepdad, and then I had a dad's house that I went to on the weekends. My parents divorced when I was like 3 years old, so I don't really remember that. All I remember is just, having the dad at home with my mom that I called dad, and then the dad that was actually my dad, on the weekends. And I had a great childhood. We weren't like super rich, but we weren't poor either. I got everything that I ever wanted and needed, But when I was 12 years old, I was in middle school, and my mom checked me and my sister out of school, and bought us McDonald's, sat us down on the couch, and said, "Hey, me and Seth," which was my stepdad at the time, "aren't getting along, and we're going to separate, and we're moving out tomorrow. Movers are coming."
It's a quick turnaround.
That was like the hardest thing up until that point in my life that I'd ever been through. I couldn't even wrap my head around it, And we moved out, and I mean, I'm talking like my stepdad and my dad were close. It was very a great co-parenting, as they would say now, situation. I played football growing up. My dad coached the defense, and then my stepdad coached the offense, and we won the Little League championship in 1996. Like, it was cool, man. But when we were moving out, I mean, it just shook me to the core. I guess, as divorce does. And we moved from like this really nice house in a really nice neighborhood. I went to this school called Vestavia. I was from Vestavia Hills, and the kids there are usually pretty well off. There's like Mountain Brook, Hoover, Vestavia, and Homewood. Those are like the towns that are like really nice. And we moved from like this big 5-bedroom house, pool in the backyard, trampoline, all this stuff, to moving into like a smaller house on the other side of town, which I knew some people that lived over there, but I never lived there, and we move over there, and I really don't have like a lot of friends in that neighborhood. And I just kind of like, looking back on it now, I can see that's where like my isolation began. And then I eventually fell into drugs and alcohol. And
how old were you around this time?
So I was 13.
Yeah, right.
When I started going through all that. And I feel like at age 12, 13, 14, is like, if you're a parent, you really just need to be whipping your kid's ass every day. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the answer, but like taking the shit away from them, like, I can cuss on here, right?
You do. Cool. Go for it, man.
Cool, yeah. Like, just like when you're that age, that's when you need that
structure and support.
Yeah,
right?
That structure and that support. And I didn't really have that at that time in my life. And I always struggled with school growing up. Like, I don't know if I had a learning disability or I just didn't, probably some ADD in there. I was an Adderall riddling kid.
Yeah.
And, but basically, long story short, man, I eventually, started smoking cigarettes and skateboarding and doing all and getting into trouble. I ended up running into my best friend from my old neighborhood, which is, the title track of my record that I just put out, Troublemaker. There's a line in there that says, the song starts out, it says, "I used to hide in the weeds every time my best friend's mama would drive by to see that Frankie wasn't hanging out with the likes of me." So Frankie was my best friend, and Frankie had left that first neighborhood that I lived in, and I ran into him at the video store, and he now just lived right up the street. So it was like I had that sense of feeling of like, wow, my best friend's here. Me and him used to get in all kinds of trouble. We like smoke sticks, go down to the creek, like, just getting in a lot of trouble together. And then we just kind of continued from there on, getting in more trouble together. And I have a sister that's 2 years older than me. And at the time she was like drinking and smoking pot and stuff like that. And there were so many nights where I would wake up and I would, the police would be at our house, my sister and my mom would be in some kind of domestic violence of some sort,
Shit.
And like, I remember back then telling myself, okay, well, I'm not drinking alcohol or I'm not smoking pot because,
That's
it
what
destroys families, or like that's what happens or whatever. But I remember one day we were at school and me and the guys were just talking crap to each other on the tennis courts. And I was like, well, man, let's like, we're not going to smoke pot, but like, our parents drink, like we can drink, it'll be fun. And we got this older kid to buy us 2 cases of beer, and
one's not enough straight to do.
Yeah, we got 2 cases of beer. I drank 8, my friend drank 9, and this other kid drank like 4. And I got sick that night. We like completely demolished this house and throw up. Like we threw up in between the couch cushions. Like I broke the toilet. Like it was bad. It was terrible. But I ended up not knowing where I was, and when I called my stepdad to come pick me up, which he wasn't my stepdad anymore. He was still in my life for a good bit. I couldn't tell him how to come get us, so I just like walked in my underwear to the Pizza Hut, and he came and picked me up. Yeah. But the reason I tell that story is because that's the first time I ever drank alcohol, and that was like an important day in my life. Everything changed from that point on out. Like I finally felt like I feel like I walked around my whole life without an instruction manual on how to live life. Like everybody else got one and know how to, feel like they fit in. Like I feel like even in sports and school and stuff, like everybody kind of knew what they were doing, and I always kind of felt like the odd man out. And when I drank alcohol, all that changed. That was an important day in my life.
What do you feel that alcohol gave you?
I feel like it just filled that God-shaped hole in my, in my gut and just my soul, I guess, and it made me feel alive, and it made me feel like I could do anything. And I remember like once my parents found out, my mom and all that stuff, I was like, yeah, I'll never do it again. But like I knew in the back of my mind that I was doing that shit every chance I could, Yeah. And that's kind of just how things progressed for me. I said I wouldn't smoke pot. I ended up smoking pot. I was like, okay, well, and as you get into that life, it's like, there's always the next guy that's doing something a little more hardcore than you. I was like, all right, well, I won't do pills. Eventually I do pills. Yeah. Okay, well, now I'm in high school, and now I met these guys, and now I'm selling weed and selling pills, and, I'll never do cocaine. I'm doing cocaine. Now I'm selling that, and make a long story short, that's how addiction was for me. It was like I tried alcohol, and then it was just like a ski jump. I just fell right off and into it.
Do you feel it would have been different if you had the role model and support? And
I feel like it could have.
Yeah.
I just don't know. It's hard for me to say would I've, because I have a hard time placing blame on other people today.
Probably a good place to come from though. Not
yeah.
Others.
For a long time, like I would blame. Anytime I could blame somebody else and me not be the bad guy, then that was always a good scenario for me, in my drinking and using days. But I definitely could have used somebody on my tail about stuff, and I just really didn't have that. So, but it all worked out. But yeah. So long story short, I'm doing all these things. I draw a line in the sand, I go across it. Draw a line in the sand, cross it. And I'm selling drugs and doing all these things. I'm hanging out with kids that are older than me that have dropped out and all that stuff. And in ninth grade, I start getting in a lot of trouble, like principal's office every day. And then they tell me that they're going to give me like permanent in-school suspension. So I was like, screw this. I talked to my mom.
What is a permanent in-school?
Well, it's like alternative school.
Oh, right.
That's what it was.
Gotcha.
And I was like, Mom, you know me. I can't even sit still for 5 minutes. That's never going to happen. So I convinced my mom to let me drop out of high school and just do homeschool. And I did that for a year. And basically my mom was a nurse and she worked 412. So there was a lot of times where I would just be at home alone all day. And I would just invite older friends over that were already out of school, and we would just kind of party and do drugs or whatever. And I was going to I was doing homeschool, but I wasn't really doing anything. And then eventually my mom was like, all right, you got to go back to school. Like this is
not working out for us.
And I go back in 10th grade, and I do pretty decent. I get like C's, which was good for me. I do enough to pass. I stay out of trouble enough, and I get to school enough. And then 10th grade summer was just balls to the wall. I mean, I was drinking, doing a lot of hallucinogens, stuff like that. And then in 11th grade, I'm selling the drugs and doing all that. I have a drug deal gone bad in my house. One of my friends gets severely beat up, like really bad. And like
So you're like 15, 16 at this point too?
Yeah. Hanging out with like 21-year-olds, just going crazy.
Fuck.
Yeah. We'll get sober here in a minute. We don't have to like
I want to dive into this stuff because this is
diving on it. But so long story short, I get my buddy gets beat up really bad in my house. The police get involved. The school finds out, all that stuff. But by this time, I've learned if anybody causes me any problems, I can just quit and run away. So I drop out of high school. My parents move, and they sell the house. They moved down to our lake place, and by this time I'm just kind of ripping and running and doing all this stuff. Well, my dad was still a pretty good big part of my life, but like he knew I wasn't living right. And every now and then I'd go to lunch with him out to his office, and when I'd leave, he'd give me a little bit of money, you know, whatever. One time I went to lunch with him, and he went into the bank to do some work stuff, and there was a check in the door, and it was for $700. It was already made out, but it was a blank check. It had nobody's name on it, so I kept it. So basically, essentially, I stole money from my father.
How do you feel about that now?
Oh, man, I feel great about it now. Like, I don't have any shame about it anymore. You know, I made things right with my dad, so like we can get into all that
we'll go
too.
in there, for sure.
But I mean, you know, I'll just go ahead and tell that story. When I was 7 years sober, I gave my dad my coin, and he told me, you know, I told him how much I loved him, and you know, and how awesome it had been getting to know him and having the relationship that we had, because so when I went to rehab and all that stuff, me and my dad weren't even that close. Like, we didn't barely even talk because I'd stolen the money from him. After I stole the money from him, he sent me to military school. He pressed charges on me when I stole the money from him. We'll just go there.
Yeah.
And then I ended up during that time also catching a felony DUI charge at 17. And so now I'm facing time in jail.
And you were going downhill at a...
Yeah. And that's why I always say, like, when I started, from the day I drank was an important day, not only for myself with what was going on inside of me, but, like, it was just straight downhill as fast as I could go. A lot of my friends that I grew up with and ran around with in an hour are dead or in prison. You know, that's kind of the route I was going, which is crazy. Yeah. So
started strong here. Like,
yeah. So, I'm facing this jail time. I've got, you know, felony theft charge, felony DUI, 2 different counties. I'm doing all this stuff, and I get high, really high one night on cocaine. I call my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I want to go to the military school. Like, I really want a second chance, you know? So I end up going to this military school in Port Gibson, Mississippi. I end up leaving. Nobody will come get me, so I just start walking down the road. Yeah, and I get drunk on a Greyhound bus on my way home. My mom picks me up, and then I go home and I drink that whole weekend. And there's a part in the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it talks about Bill Wilson, which he was one of the founders, and he talks about when he would drink, the fierce determination to win would come back. And that's what happened to me that weekend. I got drunk, and I was like, I know if they just give me a second chance, I can go back and do it. So I end up calling the military school. I'm like, please let me back in. Just let me come get back and do it, because I still have all this court stuff lingering over my head. I go back to the military school. One day, they call me in the office, and they said, hey, your dad wants to talk to you on the phone. I answered the phone, and he says, son, I went to the court today. I got in front of the judge and told him that you're trying to do right and turn your life around. And they threw all your court stuff right out the window.
What did that mean to you?
That was cool. But the next day I got kicked out of military school.
Fuck.
Yeah. I wasn't done yet, you know, and at the time I don't think that I could even realize what I was doing to my family. You know what I mean? That's what alcohol and drugs did to me. It's like it put a steering column in my neck and drove me to do some of the things that I never thought I would do. So I get out of military school. My mom's like, well, you ain't coming here. You know, my dad's like, basically, that's when me and my dad kind of quit talking. So my mom helps me get this apartment out in Pell City, Alabama, which is like, we have a lake there, and if you go to the lake, that's cool. But if you live in Pell City, it's not really a cool place to live, you know. So I get this apartment. I get a job at Hardee's Burgers, like Carl's Jr. or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
And yeah, it's like Burger King or McDonald's. And I'm walking to work every day. You know, I'm proving that I'm gonna seriously get my life on track. And then my family buys me a car. I quit the job. I go back to selling drugs, doing what I was doing.
What do you reckon it was every time you sort of got, whether it was validation or your family acknowledged the work that you were doing, you sort of just pull back?
Let's take a quick break.
Are you tired of waking up with a dry mouth, feeling sluggish? I was too, until I discovered the power of mouth taping. I read a book called Breathe, and it opened my eyes to how I could get a better sleep. So I started taping my mouth, and the results were astounding. Not only did I wake up feeling refreshed, but the data on my Whoop suggested I was getting more REM and more deep sleep, which led to me feeling better every morning. But I wanted a better solution, not just sticky tape, something that was effective and comfortable. That is why I co-founded Recover Right with a few friends. We are dedicated to helping Australians get fast and easy access to mouth tape and nose tape so you can breathe better, sleep better, and recover right. Use the discount code TMTCP for 10% off at the checkout. Sleep better with Recover Right.
I think it was just selfishness. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I just had that thing in me that all addicts do, just to like feel something beyond what you're feeling right then in that moment and do it no matter what. That was kind of my whole thought process, I guess, at the time. And I was young, and at this time, all my friends were graduating high school and going to college. Long story short, I get evicted from that apartment for I'm just blazing up blunts in there. You can smell it when you get out of your car. So they're like, yeah, we ain't gonna have that out here in the country, So they they evict me, and then again, my mom helps me again. She helps me get an apartment in Tuscaloosa where all my friends are going to school. My mom really loved me. She didn't know what the right thing was to do.
She just wanted to.
She just wanted to see me be successful, and she just thought if I could be down there with my friends, then maybe I would go get a GED and want something better for my life. Well, I just go down there and I'm doing the same old stuff. And I had one night where I got in a bad altercation with my brother. There was a gun involved, and we both got beat up real bad. And it's like the farther I went into my addiction, the denial and the lying to myself just kept getting worse. I was like, okay, well, since me and him got in that fight, and my head looks like a watermelon, that just means I don't need to mix Xanax and alcohol again, and I'm good. Not like, hey, man, wake the fuck up. You have a problem. It's like, I was just living in that.
Were people, what was your mum saying to you at this point, or did you have any people around you that were saying, wake the fuck up?
Yeah, not really, man. I think a lot of it is that I feel like I've always had a good heart, and I've always meant well, but I didn't always do well, And, I'm the baby of the family, so it was, I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that kind of, that stuff, but I know that I did have a good heart, and that I meant well, and that I was good to people. I just had a little bit of trouble growing up, and, so that happens. And then, I end up getting arrested in Tuscaloosa. I got felony possession charges and, felony DUI, and then also had a reckless driving. I was doing burnouts on University Boulevard with 2 grams of cocaine and an ounce of weed in my car, which was stupid looking back on it now. But I go to jail, and this time I'm really in jail. In my juvenile years, I went to juvie for a month. I forgot I left that out earlier. But this time, I'm really in jail, and I have one of those bonds where it's all you have to do is get somebody to sign for you, and then you can get out. You don't have to pay any money. And I'd screwed everybody over.
And no one
would call me. My mom's like, you're going to have to ride this one out. That was the first tough love situation that I've ever been in. And I'll never forget it, man. When you're in jail, you get a phone call. And it was my turn to use the phone. And I remember walking over to the phone, and there's some tables, and then there's the phones. And then the cells are over here, And I get to the second row of tables, and I just have this feeling in the gut of my stomach, just terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. It's what the AA Big Book talks about. And there was nobody to call. I'd screwed everybody over that was closest to me, that loved me. I just wanted to call somebody to say, for someone to say to me, hey man, you're good. You're going to bounce back from this. Like, we love you. We got your back, like whatever. And there was no one to call. So that was like my first moment of like, okay, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm screwed. And I remember saying, I'm done with this shit. I'm not doing it. I had some friends that finally came and bailed me out. There was a girl that I was like in love with at the time. And she was one of the ones that came and got me. We weren't dating or anything, but I was like, I remember looking at her with like tears in my eyes and being like, I'm really done with this shit. Like, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm going to not smoke weed and drink and do all this stuff. I'm going to get myself together. And I was 18 or 19 at the time. Cause that's like, I feel like
wild that this all happened before.
Yeah. I feel like at that age, 18 or 19 is when you're like, you really start dreaming like what you want to do, who you want to be, where you want to go in life, like that kind of thing. So I think that some of that started happening for me, like in those moments of like either extreme drunkenness or like just sometimes sober thoughts or whatever. So I go back to their house and everybody's drinking and partying. They called me Bird back in the day. They were like, Bird's out of jail. Like, let's throw a party, whatever. And I didn't drink.
The exact thing that you needed was a fucking party.
Yeah. So like I didn't drink. I didn't do any of that. And then everybody went to sleep. And then I'm sitting there watching Locked Up, that show, about people going to jail.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, that's where I'm going is jail. Like, cause I had already like looked up like what happens if you get discharged or whatever. It's like 3 years was like the minimum, for that. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. Can I do this? Whatever. And then as I'm like watching TV in the ashtray, I see a blunt roach. And I was like, I'm just going to smoke that. Nobody will know. I won't do it again after this. And then that was another trip, off the thing. And then by this time, like I had my apartment in Tuscaloosa, but I didn't want to go back there because I'd been arrested, blah, 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 blah. And then we eventually shut that place down, moved all my stuff out. And then I was just kind of sleeping on people's couches. And when they would get tired of me, I'd go sleep on somebody else's couch. My mom was a nurse, like I said earlier. I'd go sleep in her car during the day. She'd leave me the key so I could turn on the air conditioner. And so I was basically homeless, just kind of doing that thing. And then I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I called my mom one day and I said, I'm willing to do whatever. I just need to go somewhere and get some help. I need to figure this out, how to like not be so out of control. I didn't know what sober was. I didn't know what recovery was. I didn't know anything about, the way I was about to live my life for the next 17 years, but I didn't know anything about that. I just knew that I needed to go somewhere, because I'd been to like asylums, like psych wards and stuff like that. And I'd been to juvie and jail and all that stuff, but I didn't know what being sober was, And so I go to this place called Bradford Health Services. It's in Warrior, Alabama. And I get there, I check in, I go to sleep, and this guy comes in. His name's Roy, and he wakes me up, and I'm in the worst withdrawal I've ever been in my life, shaking, sweating, just miserable. And I'm like, oh my God, I've actually checked into rehab. Like, I'm actually here. And I think it was like the second or third day I was smoking cigs back then, and I went out to the detox porch and I was smoking a cigarette, and there's a song by Jake Owen. It's called Starting With Me. And I was like, man, if I can get sober, I'm going to buy a guitar and I'm going to teach myself how to play that song. I always loved music growing up. So
hold up. So you only started music at like 19, 20 or whatever?
Yeah, I was 19. Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. So I'm in rehab for 2 weeks. And at this point, I'm sitting around all these older people that are like in rehab, and like they're talking about some of the stuff they've done. And I'm like, well, damn, I'm not that bad, And the cool thing about like any kind of therapy or like rehab, the cool thing about rehab, that was my first introduction to any kind of like therapy, like, type of deal. We sit in this circle, counselor here, chairs there. Yep. And people go around and tell their stories. And this one guy starts telling his story. And, and he's like talking about his dad. He's talking about things he's done. And I'm just like, this guy's telling my story and I don't even know this motherfucker, Next thing I know, I'm like crying, I like snot and boogers flying out of my nose. I'm not like crying to like get my parents off my back or like there's no manipulative part of it at all. I'm like actually crying because I felt what he said, like he doesn't have a relationship with his dad. He's hurt everybody that's closest to him. He was a little bit young, he was young like me, and all this stuff. And then that, after that we circled up to pray. And when we got done praying, like they do like the serenity prayer or whatever. This guy came up to me. He's like, why don't you say the prayer? I'm like, well, I don't know it. He's like, well, I'll teach it to you, and then I just started realizing that like, wow, I'm not so different from these people after all. I started looking for the similarities and not the differences. And for the first time ever in my life, I went back to my room and I got down on my knees and I said, God, I don't know what this is or like whatever, but not that I wasn't like a non-believer or anything like that. Like I grew up in the church and all that stuff. And like I just didn't know that there was like a personal thing going on. I didn't know that it was like something you could have. I just thought it was something you did. Yeah, right. And I go down, I was like, God, I don't know if you're real or like you're listening or whatever, but like I'm freaking out. I'd just gotten this letter from my mom that said you can't come home until your court date or your sentencing. Like you got to figure this out. And I just went and I was just like, man, I just got to figure something out. Like I don't know what to do. I got up off my knees and I opened my door and my counselor's like at my door. She's like, hey, come in the office. You need to talk to this guy on the phone. I pick up the phone. He says, hey, man, my name's Robbie Keeble. I run Any Length Resources, and you're coming here, and I'm picking you up on the day you get out. And I was like, cool. And a friend of mine that I was out there running around with like weeks before had went to that same halfway house. So I knew he was there. I knew like he was doing good. He had like a year sober. So this guy, Robbie, comes and picks me up at the halfway house, and I'm still kind of on the fence a little bit about like what all this recovery talk is. And I remember getting there and like plotting and scheming in my head. I was like, oh, cool. So at 30 days, you get a pass, you get to leave. Cool. I started calling up my old friends and like, man, I get a 30-day pass. I'll come down to Tuscaloosa. We'll get blackout drunk. I'll come back, act like it never happened. Well, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. I always will be, no matter what. And I was only dry at the time. I was off of it, but I wasn't convinced. I wasn't doing anything else to protect my recovery. You know what I mean? And 30 days was a long time to wait and live with that obsession. So I finally just got, you're hearing all these things. Well, I was hearing all these things when I first got sober. Stick with the winners, go to meetings, read the big book, pray, meditate, help others. And I really wasn't doing any of that. And I remember walking into the guy that, the office, the guy that ran the halfway house. His name was Steve Ginn. And he's an older guy, and he's just like doing his hands like this on the desk. And he goes, well, look, man, here's the deal. You either going to do the deal or you going to get the fuck out of here. And I was like, well, man, I think I want to do the deal. That's why I'm here in the office. And then he wrote down this number. He said, all right, well, call this guy. This is your sponsor. You got to call him every day. And I called this guy, and I don't know him. He doesn't know me. But he starts coming over to the halfway house. We start meeting once a week. We start reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous together. We start going through the steps. And before I know it, I'm on step 9. And, I call up my dad. And one thing I will say about my dad, man, is like my dad wasn't ever like a super religious person. But once I got to the halfway house, he picked me up every Sunday, and we went to church together. And like that showed me that showing up is the most important thing in life, because he knew that I was dead ass serious about getting my life together. He loved me, and that might not have been the most important thing to him, but he knew it was important to me. So he showed up, and, so anyways, I'm on my 9th step. I go to my dad. I say, hey man, I got a job at the smoothie plant or tropical smoothie. I was making smoothies. My grandfather gave me a little truck. I was driving it around. And I was just going to meetings, and I was sponsoring other people, helping other people, living at the halfway house, just doing my thing. I got an iPod. Remember those things? Yeah. I moved on from this. Yeah, I had all my music on there, and I was going to the gym. I was just living life, man, just trying to figure it out. And I was in a whole new world because I had done the work, and the obsession to drink and to use alcohol had been removed from my life. I was experiencing God like burning bushes, like just like awesome. I'll never forget. I went to dinner with my family one night. I was sitting at a traffic light by myself afterwards, and I just started crying, and I couldn't stop. And it was because right there in that moment, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be for the first time in my life. Like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing on this planet. And it was the coolest thing ever. I know it sounds simple, but it's pretty awesome.
Well, it doesn't, because I feel like, even for me, the questions I want to ask is like, what do you feel were the main things that put you in that position? Because you found the job, which you had a job previously, you got given a car previously, and it always, let's say, fuck it up.
Yeah, fuck it up.
But you didn't this time. So what do you feel from all the things that you'd been doing in that period? Was there any ones that were the key part for you?
Yeah, man. I mean, I always say this, and I don't say this, like, I don't apologize for it or anything. People always ask me, how did you get sober and stay sober? And I those 12-step fellowships saved my ass. Like those steps are there, and they're a clear cut plan that works if you do it, 100% thorough and honest. And at the time I did that as hard as I could and as good as I could. And since then, I've been back through and but continue to work on things and make myself better. But, that was the difference, is that I connected with something bigger than myself, as a group. I had a group of people that were all doing the same thing and trying to grow and do all that, but also had a connection with a power greater than myself. And that was the biggest change for me. And it's not like a hokey pokey, like I found Jesus, but, sorry, that's my phone dropping on the floor, but it's like, that was really it. I mean, that was the deal, man. And, I was 9 months sober. I went to my father and I said, look, man, I stole this money. I did this. I listed a laundry list of things. And I learned in the amends process that it wasn't about saying you were sorry. Because, I mean, how many times did I say, I'm sorry for doing this, I'm sorry for doing that, and then turn around and do it again? It was about making the things right. I said, look, man, this is what I did. There's probably other things that I did that I don't even know I did. But this is what I did, and I want to know what I can do to make it right between the two of us. And a lot of those amends that I went and made to people went really well. They were like, just keep doing what you're doing. And that's what my dad told me.
Was it hard for you to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard. But like, the thing is like, it's never easy to say, you're married. It's never easy to say you're wrong.
Yeah.
It's never easy. No matter what you do, it's never easy to say you're wrong. But I feel like it's a lot easier. It gets easier for me to say I'm wrong a lot because most of the time I am wrong, Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was hard, but I feel like with the 12 steps, and there's a little promise that comes from each step along the way, and everything builds on the next, just like life, and it took a lot of courage to go and do that, but I knew that it was necessary for me to go do that in order to stay sober and keep what I have. And so I make the amends. He says, keep doing what you're doing. And back then I was like, hell yeah, I can do this for the rest of my life. But man, when I was 7 years sober, like I said earlier, I gave my dad my 7-year medallion. I was playing music at the time at a Mexican restaurant.
So
it was after a show. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so yeah, you picked up the guitar, like you made that commitment when you were in the big, no. Was it when you were in prison you made that decision, if I get out or when I get out I'm going to start buying myself a guitar?
Yeah, I was just going to learn.
And then you move on to playing shows as well.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just want to tell this quick amends story real quick. So like when I made that amends to my father, I was playing one night, and after the gig, he walked me out to my car, and I gave him my 7-year coin. I just picked it up, in AA, they give us these little coins, and I gave it to him, and I said, man, I love you. Like, I was going to the beach the next day with my wife at the time, which we'll get into that. And I gave him the chip, and I just said, I love you, and our relationship has been awesome. I gave him a hug, and then I left, and I went to the beach, and little did I know that would be the last time I ever talked to my dad or saw my dad. He passed away 4 days later of a massive heart attack, and it ripped me apart, dude. But all that to say this, when my dad said, keep doing what you're doing, that's how you can repay me, that means a fuckload more to me now than it did, 10 years ago.
Why does it mean more now?
It just means more because it's like he's not here anymore, and it was hard to say goodbye to him. That was probably one of the toughest things I've ever been through in my sobriety. So hard, man. Just like, you never think you're just going to wake up someday and somebody you love is going to be gone. I mean, I know now that death is a part of life, but I had never lost anybody up until that point in my life. So it was just really tough for me. And it just means so much more to me because, like, he's not here anymore, but I'm still doing it, And, I've almost been sober almost 2 decades. I just celebrated 17 years. I'm working on my second decade, But yeah, man, so I got out of rehab, went to the halfway house. I was living with my dad, working at the smoothie shop. One day I was on lunch break. I called my grandfather. I said, Pop, Pappy, I'm gonna go buy a guitar at Guitar Center. I really want to learn how to play. My family was kind of musical. My grandfather played the harp, and my uncles played guitar, like at the beach and stuff. They would get together and have little shindigs and whatnot. And I was like, I'm going to go buy a guitar. And he's like, all right, well, I'll pay for half. How much is it? So I went up to Guitar Center and I bought a Hummingbird. And I came home with it. I remember when I came home with it, I was living with my dad. Because after I made amends to my dad, he asked me to come live with him. And that was the first time I've ever lived with my dad since I was 3 years old. And I remember just being like, Dad, I bought this guitar. It's cool. He's like, oh, well, you better learn how to play it because everything else you brought home and every bright idea you've had has gone south. So I'd like to see you play it. And then next thing I know, I'm like playing Wonderwall and like Sweet Home Alabama. Every rose has its thorn. It's like from the first time I strummed that first G chord, like I just like, man, this feels better than drugs did or felt better than alcohol did, and that was like, I didn't know that was going to be what I was doing. For forever. So how I got into music, like actually like doing it as a career, big part of the 12 steps is giving back, helping other people. So I went back to that same guy, Steve, that ran the halfway house. And I said, all right, Steve, well, I've worked all 12 steps. So if you got any guys here that are kind of like me and you think I could sponsor, just let me know. I just want to stop by and tell you that. And he's like, there's this guy up in room, whatever, go up there and tell him I said you're his sponsor.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Straight up.
And I go up and it's a kid. He's like 18. He's at the halfway house and he's up there playing guitar. I'm like, oh man, you play guitar? I just bought a guitar. Let me show you what I know. And I only knew like a couple of things. But he ended up working the steps and staying sober. And he was in a rock band up here in Nashville. And he called me one day. He said, hey, man, you want to go with me to Nashville? It'd be cool to, like have somebody sober go with me or whatever. And you're my sponsor. And, some of the other guys all the other guys in the band were sober too. But so I go up there and I'd written like a couple of songs, but they had like no structure. I was just singing my little heart out, Yeah. And we're in the studio. We're on 16th Edge. The studio's not there anymore. And we're sitting there and the producer guy that owned the studio, he was like, man, play me something. And I just played him this song that I wrote. And he's like, man, you got a killer voice. Long story short, that blossoms into a friendship. And he's like, yeah, man, if you'll like come up here and quit your job and I'll do a whole record with you. Like, I believe in you. And at the time, like I'd gone back, I'd got my GED. And I started going to some college courses. So, and I was working at the treatment center I used to be a patient at, the Bradford in Warrior, Alabama. So I was like, here I am. I've I was like 3 years sober or something like that at this point, or 2.5. I have some stability in my life. I'm kind of doing what all my friends are doing, like as far as going to college and like
Is it tough at college? Because the college life is pretty party focused, right? Was it?
I was at like a community college,
right, okay.
like I was taking like the most basic classes you could take. But I know that wasn't like what God wanted me to do now, like looking back on it, because I would have just struggled so hard with that.
Yeah.
And so I'll go and talk to my family. I'm like, hey, I met this guy. His name's Wes and blah, 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 blah. Like he wants me to come to Nashville and do a record. Well, at the time I'd like also met this girl and we just went on our first date. So come up to Nashville and end up living up here for like 6 months, cut a record. Started dating that girl at the same time. We move in together. She lives with me, but I'm like back and forth doing this Nashville thing. And one of my songwriting friends that I'd met up here, I cut some of his songs on my record. We ended up doing a whole record. I was like, man, I think I'm going to move up to Nashville. Like I'm going to break up with this girl, like whatever, and just come up here and do it. And he's like, man, you're young. Just go back to your hometown, build up a fan base, get your chops up. You hadn't even played a gig yet. Like, just come the big fish in the small pond type thing. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I moved back to Birmingham after I do the record or whatever. And I ended up getting married to this girl. And she's also...
So, yeah, you didn't break up.
No, we didn't break up. I tried to, but it didn't work out. But she was sober too in the program. And we got married, and we were married for 7 years, and she relapsed. And by this time, man, I was playing gigs. I've become like I was in a wedding band, basically. I was doing weddings, frat parties. I was playing 4 nights a week. I was playing 3 to 4 nights a week and working 4 days a week, working 3 days a week. I'd work a 16-hour shift on Sundays, and then I worked two 8-hour shifts, and then I would play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, back to work Sunday.
Did you consider
no days off
at that point living the dream though? The fact that you
I was happy. I was getting it. I mean, sometimes even now, like where I'm at in my career, I look back on those days. And those are the days. And that's what's so important to me. It's like no matter where I'm at, if I'm unhappy with my career or this or that, it's so important to enjoy the journey right where you're at.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about before. You just have to enjoy it. Like one day, me and you will look back on this moment and be like, man, those were the days.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just so important to enjoy the journey. But my wife at the time ended up relapsing, and I was like, okay. I tried to stay. I mean, I went to Al-Anon. I did everything I could, before I was just like, okay, I'm either going to stay here and I'm going to get drunk again. I'm going to go insane, or I got to do what's best for me and my sobriety and my saneness. So I got divorced. And
was it hard to put yourself first in that situation?
It was very hard because it wasn't hard. I know this sounds terrible. It wasn't hard divorcing her, but she had a son. And I knew that once that ended, I wouldn't be a part of his life anymore. And that's the only part about it that still hurts with me, Yeah. That I think that's something that I don't struggle with it anymore, but it's still something I think about, I would say that. But I don't know, man. I think my sobriety always comes first, no matter what. If somebody told me tomorrow I could have 15 number ones and all the money in the world, but they were like, you got to get drunk to have it, I wouldn't do it. That's just like my sobriety is who I am. It's my identity. I know without it, I'm nothing. So there's not anything that I can put in front of that.
It's good to see that you can shift or develop a belief so strong that it comes before anything else.
Yeah.
Because so often when people hit rock bottom or their life's falling apart, the identity of that they're whatever the belief is, whether you for me it was like I was a crumb back in the day. Yeah. And then when that shifted to the beliefs that I have about myself now, completely transformed my life. So the fact that you've now, like, that is your identity is powerful.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, I just know that, like, there's like, I do all these things now, there's like, I'm going to the gym now. I've been doing that for a hot minute, like.
You've killed it lately.
Yeah. I mean, I'm only like 5 months in, but like, I just benched 135 for the first time ever in my life. That's pretty
they're
cool.
the wins you want, right? Like, that's epic.
But like I work out, I go to therapy. I write songs that I want to write. I write the kind of songs that I want to hear. And to do those things, I have to continue to look at myself and recreate myself and who I am, and continue to dig deeper into whether it's childhood trauma or, something I created along the way. Like, I have to do that, but I can't look at any of that shit if I'm fucked up, So it's like, I can't be who I am without being sober. So it is who I am, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, where were we at on my story? Let's see.
You just got the divorce, or you just
I just divorced. I lived with my mom for a little while. I was like, I can't do this. I got to get out of here. I lived with my brother for 3 months. I was like, can't do this. I got to get out of here. I lived with my best friend, Frankie, the kid from when I was younger. And we're still best friends today. It's pretty crazy.
That is awesome.
Talked to him
so what are you,
yesterday
like 3 years older than him, 4 years older?
Me and Frankie are, I'm 1 year older than him.
Right.
And
that's so cool.
so I live with him, and then I have another friend that I lived with for 3 years when I first got sober, when I had my first apartment. His name's Chris, and he's been on my podcast. And I love just having, like, my normal friends and stuff on my podcast that, like, just talk about life. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. Like Theo does, like, he'll do like a trash man. Like, he did one recently with like a lunchroom lady or something. It was hilarious.
Mate, his pod is
it's
one of
10
the
out of 10
all-time.
Yeah, it's great.
Even just the reels where sometimes you're just like, I can't believe he said that, but that's the best.
Yeah, he's great. But anyways, Chris lived with me for a little while, and I always value his opinion. He's sober and he's like me, and he's a father now, and I've watched his life change. He's got 12 years or something like that now. And I remember just going over to his house and sitting on the couch, and I was like, hey, man, like, I'm 29. I'm thinking about just, like, moving to Nashville. I just got to know that, like, I gave it everything I had for this music thing. Because by now I'm making a living playing music, but, like, I'm not like I'm writing like 6 songs every year, I've always wanted to write like a song every day, or like I always wanted to have a publishing deal and, like, all the things. And I always just wanted to give Nashville a shot. And he was like, man, I think that's a great idea. That way, if you go up there and you fall on your ass, you can always come back to Birmingham and say, remember that time I lived in Nashville and gave this thing a shot. So I moved here in 2019. My stepmom, which is my dad's wife, she gets me 2 months worth of rent and bought me like a bed. Because at this point, I'd just gone through my divorce. I have nothing, dude. Like, I gave everything to my ex. Like, everything I owned fit in my Toyota Sequoia when I drove up here to Nashville. And I rent a room from a guy, $500 a month. I live there. I have a mattress on the floor, a TV dinner tray, an Xbox, and a TV that I bought off of Craigslist, or something like that. And I have a Rubbermaid underwear drawer that also serves as like a nightstand, And my mom bought me a brand new bedspread and sheets, and I put it on there. But I mean, it's on the floor. And I move up here, and I just start going out to the bars and meeting people, shaking hands, doing all that stuff. And it was tough at first, but I truly believe that my sobriety prepared me for everything. When I first started going to meetings early on, I'd sit in the back. I'd stand outside, and if I saw anybody coming my way like they're about to talk to me, I'd pull out my phone and pretend like I was on my phone. But the longer I stayed there, the longer I kept doing the work, kept doing the things, stayed committed to the process, the more I felt like, hey, I belong here. I've done the work. I'm here, And I started making friends, and that's same thing. When I came to Nashville, I'd walk into the bars. I'd go talk to somebody, probably be the 10th time of introducing myself to them. That's what happens here, you know. I'd say something to them, and then it'd be like past midnight, and they'd be like, shlam, 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 you know, they would be like, they're drunk. And I'd be like, okay, well, cool. Tonight's not my night. I'll leave. And I remember getting in my car and just like feeling empty and like, what the hell am I doing here? And then just being reminded like, hey, it's okay. You don't have to figure this out right now. Like, you're here for life, baby. You know, you just got to get up and try again a different day. You know, I remember telling myself that. And anyways, I end up meeting some people. I start writing songs. I've got 2020's coming up. It's going to be the best year as far as like frat gigs and stuff. I'm going to get in the studio, record some songs. Like I'm starting to like make a, you know, I got this beach gig down at the beach where we go down there for like 2 weeks. They put us up and they give us 2 hotel rooms.
That's so good.
And like, you know, we're doing like this residency. We're making like $800 a day as a band. Like we're gonna, you know, I'll be able to pay my bills at least for 2 months off of that, you know, gig, and everything's lining up. And then we do our first 2 weeks, and then we come back home, and it's COVID, and everything's shut down. We're not doing anything. But man, I'll tell you what. So I'm up here in Nashville. I'm meeting people. I'm writing. I'm doing all the things, but I'm not hanging out with anybody. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any like real connection other than the 4 hours we spend together while we're writing the song.
Yeah.
I got to go back a little while. So I used to play in this bar called Sky Bar. It's in Auburn, Alabama. And I used to play down there once a month. It's the biggest bar on the college campus down there. And one night I was in there, I was singing Big Green Tractor, and I was changing the words, take you for a ride on my big tallywhacker. And it was hilarious. Sometimes I would do that like just to see if people were paying attention, you know. And this guy came up to me that night and was like, man, that was hilarious. My name's Matt. Gave me a fist bump and then walked away. I never thought anything about it again. I was at Revival, which was around here in town when I first moved here. And this big tall guy comes walking up to me, taller than me, and he goes, hey, man, I'm Matt. I met you at Sky Bar, and you were changing the words to whatever. And he was like, man, I just moved here in October. I was like, man, I just moved here in January. Like, he was like, well, I live out here in Hermitage. I was like, dude, I live in Hermitage. And I was
just following.
I was like, dude, I guess we're hanging out, you know? And
we're become best friends.
So yeah, exactly. So me and him start hanging out and playing Madden together. And Matt McKinney's like one of those guys that he's a songwriter here in town, but he's one of those guys that he's like, you may have had a friend like this that just like connects different groups of people that wouldn't normally mix, you know? I guess kind of like J Todd, you know?
100%.
And, so we kind of like formed this like friend group. Some of these people were already friends, but we all start hanging out. You know, the first month, nobody went anywhere or did anything, you know, for COVID because we thought we were all going to die, you know. And then we were just like, screw it. Let's all hang out. Let's build the Nashville immunity, you know. We're like hanging out we're hanging out at each other's houses in the backyards and all this stuff. And McKinney shows me this song one day that he wrote called Dick Down in Dallas. I was like, it was just a work tape. It was funny. They started opening up restaurants again. We went to Chili's, me, him, and my roommate at the time, Mitch. And we're listening to the work tape, and we're just like, I'm not thinking anything of it. And my roommate, Mitch, goes, man, if this was a song right now, I would buy it. You should cut this, Trey. And I was like, he was like, and you should put it on TikTok. I didn't even know what TikTok was. And I went home and I went in my room for a minute. And then I told McKinney to send me the lyrics and the work tape. And I learned the song. Then I walked in the room and I go, you know what? Fuck it, man. Let's do it. I've been putting out music since 2013. Like, this will just be like a funny Nashville song. Let's do it. And I start playing the song at all these bonfires and the whole friend group singing it. And then I play around over here at Live Oak and I play the song and everybody in the bar knows it because it's all our friends. Somebody takes a video. It ends up on Facebook, ends up on Call Her Daddy's Facebook group.
Really?
And then, yeah, on their, like, they have like a fan Facebook group. It ended up on there. And then from there, McKinney got it put on Old Row. And that was like the first viral. I'm talking like maybe 40,000 views, but to us back then that was like holy shit, you know. So by then we're definitely going to record this song. I'm like going back and forth, like, how am I going to do this? Am I going to do more like a Corey Smith vibe, like just like acoustic, you know, like sound like or like that rehab song, you know, sitting at a bar on the inside. But Maxwell, the guy that was producing my music, Alex Maxwell, he was like, "No, dude, we're gonna like full on do this." And I'm laying in bed, and Grady Saxman, he's a drummer here in town, and he has Saxman Studios. A lot of people have recorded out there, and he's played on everything I've done since 2013.
Really?
Yeah, he's like a good friend. He just sends me a text, and all the text says is "Dick down in Dallas." And I called Maxwell. I was like, "Alex, dude, we're going to Grady's to record this," because he just texted me. And like, I show up over there. I think I paid $1,200 for the recording. Saul Littlefield played bass, acoustics, and electric, and Grady played drums. And then Alex Maxwell did all the extra piano, the oohs, and all the backgrounds. We did that the next day. Song was done in 3 days. We had it mixed and mastered, and then we put it up on the internet, you know, for online distribution. And we decided that we're going to put it out December 1st because there's like No Nut November, December 1st, right. Dick Down Dallas, funny. And then we get a call from the distributor, and they're like, "Yeah, man, if you put the song out today, it's going to be number one." You know, like, I was like, "What?" And we have a little get together at the house. The song comes out, and it's on number one on iTunes charts, all genre and in country. We end up beating out BTS, the pop group. We beat
Korean,
the K-pop group. We beat them out in sales for that week, so it was a Billboard number one.
Wow.
I have them coming after me on Twitter. I've got like 2 Twitter followers at the time, you know.
Who's Trey Lewis?
Yeah, who the fuck's Trey Lewis? All this stuff. Yeah, it's just crazy, man. And from there on, we're like touring. We did 141 shows that year as a band. Jeez. Yeah, it was crazy. I'm taking meetings with every record label in town, New York, LA, all that stuff.
How did this feel for you? You literally just get thrown into being the man of the moment where everyone's wanting you. This has been the dream. Right?
It was crazy, man. I mean, I feel like I was ready for the moment. You know, I really felt like I earned the time to be there. You know, had I been 20 years old and 2 years sober, I probably wouldn't have been able to, deal with that. I probably would have just blown through all the money that I made. I ended up staying independent and not signing a record deal with that song. So I still own it. Yeah.
That's done hundreds of millions of streams, right?
Yeah. It's certified platinum, but we are turning in the report to have it certified double platinum. So
congrats.
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
And to be able to keep that independent is awesome, because normally the labels want what you got. Right?
Yeah. So now I'm with River House artist, and I'm on a record deal there. But I still own a lot of my old stuff, so I still have the income from that, which I'm extremely grateful for, that they believed in me enough to do a go forward deal. We just put out a record in February. It's called Troublemaker. It's probably one of my most favorite collection of songs that I've ever put out. But I will say this, sometimes it is hard being the Dick Down in Dallas guy. I won't lie. I mean, that's kind of like the elephant in the room. Like, that's what I'm most known for. And I will never be the guy that's going to be like, "Oh no, I'm not doing that song. I'm tired of doing that song." That's the song that made me who I am. That's the song that's continued for me to paid for me to have a dream, to continue to put music out, hoping something else will, I'd rather be in the position I'm in now, because I can go tour anywhere and people show up to hear that song, and it's my job when they leave to make them a Trey Lewis fan. If they come a Dick Down Dallas fan, leave a Trey Lewis fan. That's like my motto,
Dude,
but it's like the thing is like, I am the Dick Down in Dallas guy. Like, I accept that responsibility. Like, that's fine. But I'm not what you would think I am. You know what I mean? Like, I have a lot more in the tank than that. I have a lot bigger story than just that one song, and that's the part that can be frustrating at times. But man, I trust God's plan. I feel like that song is in my life for a reason. because I can handle it. I feel like there's more story to tell, and it only makes sense to me that the rest of that story gets told. And I feel like there's a part of me that feels like if I don't do my best to bring my shovel to that mountain, that he's got to move. You know what I mean? I can bring my shovel. But if I don't do that, then I'm not living in his will, and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I can't not do that. You know what I mean? But yeah, sometimes it's tough. Some days you're just like, damn, is this all I'm ever going to be? You know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm grateful for it, and just keep going.
I love your approach to it, where it's like they come in as trying to find the dick down in Dallas and experience that, but then they go away as a Trey Lewis fan.
Yeah. So it's been really cool, man. So I also signed a publishing deal at Sony Music Publishing, and I've been writing songs over there for 3 years now. And last summer, a week ago to this week, I went on a writer's retreat and to write some songs for my next project. And I wrote a song called 3 Feet Tall, and Cole Swindell ended up cutting it and putting it out. And I love when I meet people that don't know that, a lot of people don't know me. They know Dick Down in Dallas, but they don't know me. So whether it's an Uber driver or a lady cutting my hair or something, like you can judge people and tell, like, would they probably be offended by Dick Down in Dallas, or like
so catchy,
or like would they like be more of like a 3 feet tall kind of person, And it's like, it's cool to be like, oh yeah, I'm in music, and they're like, well, have you done anything we've heard of? I was like, and if they're like a 3 feet tall looking kind of person, I'll be like, yeah, you ever heard that song 3 Feet Tall by Cole Swindell? They'll be like, oh yeah, man, I love that song. I'll be like, yeah, I wrote that. But I also, and then hitting them with the, oh yeah, but I also sing that song Dick Down in Dallas. They're like, it's two different complete contrasts.
You got to be,
know what I mean? Like, I feel like 3 Feet Tall is probably one of the best songs I've ever written,
Yep.
And Dick Down in Dallas is one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of, but two completely different ends of the spectrum. And I love being able to hit people with both. And then like, if it's like a Dick Down in Dallas kind of guy, I'll be like, yeah, man, I sing that song. But I also wrote this song, and they're like, no way, But man, it's been cool. So after that happened, the Cole Swindell thing happened. I met Tracy Lawrence. He sings "Paint Me a Birmingham," "Time Marches On." I met him a while back. Him and Lainey Wilson played a show together, and I was in my bus, and his tour manager came over and was like, hey man, Tracy Lawrence wants to meet you. I was like, shit, he wants to meet me? Fuck, I want to meet him, Yeah. But like, I don't ever like bother people when I'm on the road, because sometimes they don't want to be bothered, but I thought it was cool that he wanted to meet me. So I went over to his bus, and me and him just kind of formed an organic relationship. I did his podcast. He came on my podcast, and we've always just texted back and forth, stayed in touch. And it's weird because his manager went to college with my manager,
really,
which is like
generational.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
So my roommate at the time was Ella Langley. She's been my roommate for the past 5 years up until about a week ago. And she went on tour with Riley and Tracy, and they did like this opening show here in Nashville. And I ran into Tracy's manager. He was like, she was like, yeah, he's cutting songs. I think he's only cutting like 5 songs, but if you have anything, send it to him. So like, I'm thinking, man, I just got this Cole Swindell thing. Like, what in my catalog could I send to him? And I wrote this song called Out Here in It. And I was like, screw it, I'll just send it to him. I was like, hey man, Trey here. Like, here's the song. I heard you were cutting. Your manager told me you were cutting. And like, it doesn't have to make things weird in between us. If you don't like it, just let me know. Either way, it's cool. And he asked me for a lyric sheet, and I was like, I sent it to him, whatever. I didn't hear anything. And then he does a turkey fry every year here for Thanksgiving. Right, okay. And he's like, come to the turkey fry. So I came to turkey fry, shook his hand, took some pictures, kissed the babies, whatever. And he's like, yeah, man, I cut your song, by the way. I'll send it to you tonight so you can listen to it. And I'm like, what? Yeah. I'm like, what? And so the whole way home on Thanksgiving, I'm driving back to Alabama to go with my family, and I just listen to it on repeat and cry because, I grew up listening to his music, What would, 19-year-old, 20-year-old me think of the man I am right now? This is pretty awesome, you know. And anyways, long story short, he put the song out. You know, he was only cutting 5 things. So I went from having no cuts on the Tracy Lawrence record to being the title track of the record of the 5 songs that came out. And then he ended up calling me a few weeks ago, asked me to come sing on a version of it. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on here, but I got in the studio with him. I sang on it, and I don't know if it's ever going to come out, but I did it. But he asked me to come to the Ryman and sing with him, and I got to go to the Ryman. And it was pretty funny because like his band.
Is that a goal of yours? Like,
yeah, well, I'd already played the Ryman. I went on tour with Kid Rock in 2021, yeah, right. And he does a comedy show up there. And he asked me to start off the comedy show. But like Theo was there, Shane Gillis was there. It was awesome. But it felt good to like play the Ryman for an actual music event, I guess. And but when I walked on the stage, his band started off. That's how they introed me to the show. They're like, yeah, we're not doing that song tonight, but Trey Lewis wrote this song with me, and we sang it together, man, and it was like the coolest thing ever. Like, can't dream that shit up.
Yeah.
You know? It's crazy.
What do you have left? I know you said throughout this that like it's important to be present and yeah, loving where you're at, but what's on the bucket list that you want to tick off?
The Opry, man. I feel like it's a long shot for me. I feel like...
Why?
I think because I am the Dick Down in Dallas guy, you know. It's like the mega church of country music, you know. But I think if Jelly Roll can do it, if there's a lot of people that have played on there that, you know, if they can do it, I can do it. And, you know, I think that the biggest thing for me to continue to do is continue to be consistent, you know. And that's the thing. It's like, man, like goals and all that stuff are awesome and wanting to achieve the thing, but like, man, I'm in love with the journey, you know, and I'm addicted to the grind, you know. So I don't think there's any certain level of success that I can hit that I can be like, okay, well, I'm good now. You know, I feel like I'm always going to want to dig and become a better person mentally, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, you know. And that's just kind of where I'm at. But there's a lot of things I want to do, man. I want to play the Opry. I want to have a #1 song on country radio, mostly because people think I can't do it, you know. And I just want to prove to whoever the guy is. I mean, hell, he might be in jail. He might be and gone through similar things that I have and didn't have a normal path to finding out who he was as a person. And that proving to people that you can do anything you put your mind to. And I know there's people out there doing it, but I feel like my story is pretty powerful, man. And I don't mean that egotistically. I just feel like we're all put here for a reason, so we might as well make the most of it. And I feel like that's the best thing that I have to offer this world is to continue to live and not give up.
Dude, it's a powerful story. It's one of the first podcasts in a long while where I've just been listening. Like, just fully glued to hear what happens next. And I've also listened to a couple of podcasts of yours and know some of the stuff. But, mate, it's been awesome to spend some time together and get
Dude,
to
I
hear
appreciate it. It's been awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, man, it's been good. And for all the people who are listening, you go check out Trey on Spotify and podcasts and all that sort of stuff. I'll have all
follow me on social media. Send me a you can send me a DM. Let me know you heard the podcast. I'll respond to it. If you got any questions for me.
No dick down in Dallas pics.
Yeah, no dick pics.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.